What's up, everyone? Welcome back once again to the Football Goons podcast. We're coming in hot, fresh off of week one of real football. It feels exciting to be talking about and reacting to some meaningful football once again after we had a full slate of games, save for Miami and Tampa Bay this past weekend. Lots to talk about this week, from overreactions, classic overreactions of week one, to panic attacks and more. But first, let's check in with the rest of the crew here. Guys, how was your week one? Did you have an enjoyable week one experience, whether it's, maybe not so much watching your team, but from a fantasy perspective, or are you scrambling right now? Are you in panic mode?
I had a great week one.
Yay, Twins.
Hey.
Yeah, I loved week one. My squad won. Felt real good about the Eagles' performance. My FanDuel was outstanding this week. I hit pretty well. Fantasy-wise, season-long leagues, I went 4-3, which, I'm 0-1 in our college league for the first time since 2011, so that kind of hurts. But outside of losing in that one, which is frustrating, that I'd like to say, I don't know, Rock, you probably wanted to tote yourself here, but of all the crap we give you, of the four of us, you're the only one that's 1-0.
I don't love that.
I'd be lying if I said I wasn't going to bring it up on my own.
Multiple times
Throughout this podcast. No, I mean, it's a great week one. I mean, obviously, I had such low expectations for the Jets that at 9-point losses, I'm going to take it as a win. Fantasy went well for me. I went 3-0 in fantasy this week. My fourth league, unfortunately, does not start until next week because my league commissioner sucks. But, that's besides the point. We won't get into that today. But, yeah, I mean, happy for Miles and South. The Birds got a victory this weekend. And all in all, just happy that football's back, man. It's nothing better than just being able to sit down on a Sunday afternoon and just enjoy.
I'm just glad football's back, and I didn't have a great fantasy week. One league I lost to Miles by 0.9. Didn't love that. In our league, we're all 4 in together. I lost to 54 points of defense.
Wow,
I don't love that. 54 points of defense. So yeah, that's not great. But won my other league, and And I'll mention that Miles is in his typical overreaction state, and week one, South is either in love football or hate football, and if it's in love football, by week 2 that'll be done. So we'll see you next week when you're sad.
Yeah, right now I'm on love football.
It'll just last 1 week.
Only had one rough performance fantasy-wise, so it was kind of whatever. Even in that one, my team was okay. It was just like, just came up a little short or whatever, but not panicking on the players that I have. I just feel like they didn't perform well. Just loved the fact that literally went from basically the time I woke up to the time that I fell asleep watching football Sunday, and then, got through Monday and got 2 more games. So not a whole lot, that's better than that for week one. So I'm so glad football's back. I know everybody out there listening is glad football is back. And, I don't know. We might have some folks in rough shape in fantasy. So, let's talk about fantasy right off the bat here. Week one always brings out the best in fantasy football overreactions. Whether it's dropping players that we regarded highly enough to draft for the hottest trend of week one, or trading a guy based on a single game, we don't advise on overreacting. Cool heads always prevail in fantasy football. But let's take a look at some of the players that a lot of owners are picking up this week, kind of hot and heavy, and decide how we feel about them. The first name is probably the name that's jumping off on everybody's articles out there, everybody else's discussions. Tarik Cohen of the Chicago Bears, running back. He had 103 total yards this past week and a touchdown. He looked explosive against the Falcons. They integrated him nicely into the game plan. Guys, how do we feel about Tarik Cohen? Are we buying in at this point?
So I'm going to bring back something that Deal said earlier. I think he because he got drafted so late in the actual draft, we forgot that this guy's name in college, his nickname is Joystick. There's a reason for that. So I'm buying in on Tariq Cohen. Like Sal said, listen, if you went 1-0 and you didn't lose any players to injury this week, don't sell your team. You're going to be fine. But if you had an injury to a running back, this might be a guy you want to target. And here's why. Got 14 touches. They got him actively involved in the game, even in a losing effort to a far superior Atlanta Falcons team. You got 14 touches, and that they didn't take away from Jordan Howard's touches. So they're actively trying to get both guys involved in this game plan. This guy could be a very good sleeper pick. He could be this year's Tyreek Hill, where they're going to get him the ball in gadget situations, but the payoff is going to be very big for you throughout the entire course of the season. So if you have a need for a running back, you own David Johnson and he went down. No, he's not going to give you David Johnson's production, but he could be a nice fill-in guy for all those extra times.
Yeah, I'll mention that we were actually on this guy way before now. We talked about him back, 3 months ago. So
even before the draft.
Yeah, well before the draft, we were mentioning this guy on air.
Right.
So this guy isn't a new name for us. I know for most players he is, but we've been watching him for a while, and he is just an exciting player. I did claim him in a league where my bench was a little shaky. I feel great about my starters, but my bench was a little shaky. So I'll say that if you are one of those guys that suffered some major injuries, DJ, guys like that, or if you're in a team that your bench isn't quite that strong and there's nobody you're really sold on, and you're not really giving up a big spot to pick him up, I think he's worth picking up because he's going to get on the field, he's going to make plays, and they're going to figure out a way to work him in.
They just don't have any receivers. I mean,
no, it's awful.
Cameron Meredith gone, Kevin White gone. I mean, so it's funny because we talked about Tevin Coleman and Devontae Freeman, and Coleman was going to get his snaps out of the slot. Nobody saw this coming, but
sure.
this is what's going to happen. Tariq Cohen's going to get 80 catches.
Yeah.
So I like that Rock touched on. By no means should you look at 103 and a touchdown if you're a Jordan Howard owner and panic, because those two guys are absolutely going to be top two on that team in touches, no doubt.
Yeah.
I think this really could mirror the situation in Atlanta. I will be the one person that kind of rides the fence a little bit in this regard. I don't think you're going to see consistent pass targets at the number that he was at last week. You're going to have weeks where it's 5 or 6. You're not going to get that high threshold of passing targets, even with the receivers going down, because I still think the Bears are going to have their struggles at times on offense. And now teams are going to have a little bit of tape on this guy. Now, let's not forget that going into last week, Benny Cunningham was the guy that was going to play this role, and he got injured at the beginning of that game. So the Falcons had no idea what to expect from Tariq Cohen. Maybe the next couple games they can get caught off guard when you're playing against them. But I think teams are going to understand that, okay, we need to take this a little more serious. So he is still a rookie. There are still going to be some hiccups, but he's going to be productive, especially in PPR formats. So if you can pick him up without damaging your team or giving up somebody that you drafted highly or anything like that, I'm not jumping off of the ship here in order to dive in and get him. But if I can get him at a reasonable cost, I'm all in on it. So,
South, I do want to argue and just say that there are plenty of guys that have gotten their job due to injury and kept it for a long time.
Right.
Like, I don't know, your favorite player in the NFL history.
Oh, absolutely. But here's the thing. My argument on this is that I think it was just unexpected. So for me, now teams are going to be able to expect it and try to game plan for it. Whether they can stop it is a different thing. But the Falcons had no idea that they needed to plan for Tariq Cohen in the way that they ended up needing to. So I think it was just kind of like one of those element of surprise things, catch off guard. I think the talent is more than enough to be able to be productive. But I do caution that some of the production is going to roll back a little bit.
I think his production might. I don't think he probably won't sustain that, but I do think he will sustain the targets. I don't think they're going anywhere because they don't have anybody else to throw the ball to. Like he's going to be the guy that they throw to.
All right. Well, we'll see on Cohen. Obviously, it's a consensus here that we feel like you should try and scoop him up if it's reasonable to do so. This could be a big reward guy this season. Let's talk about Chris Carson of the Seattle Seahawks. Really tough situation at running back for the Seahawks. He was the guy who had the most snaps. It's kind of like a participation trophy in that backfield, if we're being honest. Right. He had 27 snaps. Eddie Lacy looked awful. I don't know what to take away from that, but Carson was semi-productive, 5 yards per carry, even behind a pretty bad offensive line. So how do we feel about Chris Carson moving forward?
If it's week 2 and you're on Chris Carson's train, things have derailed real quickly. I mean, like, he was the backup entering week 1, and now Thomas Rawls is back, and CJ Prosise still has talent. Like, I don't want any of these guys at all. So I Captain Negativity, but no.
Miles, I'm so glad we're 2 for 2 on this. I mean, like, listen, the Packers did a great job of limiting the amount of time that the Seahawks spent on the field, but they only ran like 48 plays, and he had 7 touches. I hate the whole, well, this guy was on the field for this many plays. I really don't like that. Show me touches. Volume is king. And if you're not getting the touches, then what's the point? He had 7 touches, 6 rushing attempts, and 1 pass catch. That's it. I'm not buying in on that. I'm not readjusting my roster for 7 touches a game. Not doing it.
Well, I will mention though, you do have to be on the field to even get touches. So those 27 snaps are something. That means it could possibly turn into production. I'm not really one that thinks it's going to though, because it's just they got 4, I guess, okay running backs. So what are they going to do? What are they going to do with it? Like, it's best case scenario. It's like New England that you don't know what they're going to do, but none of them are very good. So probably nothing much is going to happen there. But I will say I did hear an insider before this game say that they really like Chris Carson and they won't be surprised if he gets the most touches. So pretty big news early on that somebody had that information.
It just sucks that the most touches is 7.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, they none of it was very good though. So none of their offense. So it's not like you're going to sell their whole offense because of it. So
yeah, I don't expect that the offense is going to be looking that bad. I mean, the Seahawks are traditionally slow to really get going. I don't understand it. Well, I guess I do. Like, they really care about football come December and January when it really matters.
Right.
But I mean, from a fantasy perspective, it's so frustrating because, like, this team should be pretty good, and you're counting on certain guys. Now, I'll say this with Chris Carson: I do think that he's a guy to watch. I'm not sure that I'm putting in a waiver claim on him this week and this early, but if I can add him to a watch list, or if I can get him after the waivers, process goes through, and I don't have to use a claim or anything, and I have the space to kind of put him away for a little while, I think that the cream rises to the top in this instance. Now, whether or not they're going to actually follow through and use a running back, have a feature guy, I doubt it. But this is a guy who later on in the year, I think he could be a sneaky good play for you later on. So if you have the ability to stash him, I like what I saw in very small bursts. So yeah. I'm not willing to use a waiver claim on him, though. So I'll throw that out there. All right, let's talk about one more running back. And I put one name here, but I really want to talk about the entire situation. As we all know at this point, David Johnson went down. He's got a wrist injury. There's still, the jury's kind of out on how long it's going to be. From what I'm hearing, they're talking up to 12 weeks. Bruce Arians came out right before we went live and actually said that he's hoping to have him back by Christmas, which doesn't do a ton for fantasy football owners. Now, given where you probably had to draft David Johnson at 1 or 2, if you probably don't have a ton of depth at running back. I mean, there's a chance that you do, but considering that, especially in deeper leagues, a lot of backs were probably gone by the time it came back to you. What are your options here with David Johnson? I mean, we could talk about guys that you can explore with a trade if we want to get that far, but I just highlighted Kerwin Williams here because I think that for this week against the Colts, he could be a sneaky good, just throw him in your lineup and get some production if you're desperate. But what's the outlook at the running back position there?
I wanted to make a joke about Kerwin Williams and Sherman Williams, the paint store, but nothing
Sherwin?
even comes to mind. Sherwin Williams. But nothing even comes to mind. Like, listen, this is exactly what I think me and Miles were talking about a couple of weeks ago.
Why did you bring it up then?
If nothing comes to mind, like why?
Like, other than just singing the at Kerwin Williams song, like
Ask,
the jingle.
ask Sherwin.
Ask
Williams.
Sherman Williams, whatever it is.
We should
Doesn't
have talked
matter.
about this in the pre-show meeting.
Yeah,
We
you should
should-
run. You should have run this idea by us.
I should have run this. Okay, regardless. Listen, Miles and I both brought this up a couple weeks ago when we were talking about Julian Edelman, and I'm going to bring up the same thing here. You know, none of these guys in that Arizona backfield are David Johnson. So do not assume next guy up. Just don't. Like, it might be a good play this week because I'm sorry, Deal, but after watching what the Rams were able to do to the Colts last week, you know,
Wasn't pretty.
it wasn't pretty. But none of these guys are David. David Johnson is a special player. I'm finally on board with David Johnson, and that's probably why he got hurt this year, because I'm finally on board. All right. But realistically, nobody else can carry a backfield like he could have. So don't get into this. Well, if David Johnson can do this, then his backup is gold. No, it's not. I'm out.
Yeah, I've got to say, I think this week I would consider Williams. I think, again, I'm not going to try and use a waiver claim, but if you can scoop him up after the fact, you know, it's a decent matchup this week if you're absolutely desperate and you need a filler. But I've got to say, like, I'm looking at this from the totally opposite perspective. If you're in a league and you don't own David Johnson and you notice that guy or that, you know, that owner in your league doesn't have a lot of depth there, we've absolutely got to try and work out some kind of trade where you can take away another really good player and capitalize on their panic if it's possible, because I've seen so many crazy screenshots today of trade offers that have went out that were accepted. People are in panic mode. And I think that a lot of it stems off what I mentioned earlier. If you drafted David Johnson, you did it high. So you probably didn't get a stud running back when it swung back around. So, you know, I'm looking at it from that perspective. Am I wrong there?
I don't think you're wrong necessarily. I mean, I only own David Johnson in one league. I accepted a trade earlier today where I'm getting Jaquiz Rogers for Willie Snead. The biggest reason that actually helps me is I took Johnson and I took Fournette, and then I hung out and just waited for Doug Martin, and I took Doug Martin. So, like, I really had no one else to play. But it's not so much a panic mode thing. It's just you drafted DJ and you're like, all right, I'm good at one spot. I can focus elsewhere. You know what I mean? So I don't take that trade because I think my season's over, but I do take it because I have to field a team.
Right.
Like my number 2 running back before that trade was Wendell Smallwood until Doug Martin comes back. Like, that's a problem right now.
Yeah.
So that being said, but I think the only thing I disagree with what you said, if I'm, you know, my other leagues where I don't own David Johnson, screw that guy. I'm not trading him anything. I'm not helping him out. It's one less team I got to worry about taking my title.
Right.
You know, you're looking in standard leagues. Now you have a guy who didn't draft till 20 or 24. Just sitting there like, oh, well, I'm not helping him. Struggle. You're like, please pick up Tariq Cohen and start him every week. Pick up Thomas Rawls or Chris Johnson or Kerwin Williams. Like, do that against me. I want to beat you.
Are you saying that they
help.
should ask Kerwin Williams?
What I'm saying is, yes, if you can catch them in panic mode and fleece them, go ahead. Don't give them a fair trade. I'll thank the guy who did it for me, but he didn't have to do that.
Yeah, no, I'm saying definitely fleece them.
Yeah, but there you go.
Fleece.
That I can get
Please
on board
away.
Yeah, I will mention too. I think that if you're in a PPR league, especially one PPR, I personally think Andre Ellington's a better pickup here. You have to be pretty desperate to want either of them at this point. And it's shocking if they bring David Johnson back at Christmas, because how many weeks is that? 11 or 12? They're going to be 0-12.
Yeah.
Like, what are you bringing them back for? So don't plan on getting David Johnson back on your squad this year. Think of an alternative plan. And probably Kerwin Williams isn't your best bet there. So go somewhere else.
Just one last word. What muddies me up about Kerwin and Andre Ellington, they brought back Chris Johnson today.
Yeah.
So,
That's
like,
what they're going to do.
now you have 3 below average running backs behind a really bad line and a quarterback who can't keep anybody honest anymore.
Yeah.
Just don't touch the situation.
Maybe the Seahawks and they can figure out a trade, or combine their guys and get one good running back. Can you do that? Or
Yeah, but
no?
you can combine the lines and still have 10 bad linemen.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's all the running backs and have 10 bad running backs.
Correct.
All right. So we're going to pick up our pace here, talking through a couple more guys. Let's talk about Kenny Golladay, wide receiver of the Lions. Picked up some speed in the conversation early on in the preseason. It feels like every year you have one of these wide receiver performances where somebody comes out, has 2 touchdowns in week 1. Everybody's blowing up over them. Then they kind of fade away. Do we see Golladay as a guy who may fade away and kind of just be marginal? Or is he someone that's going to be productive more so over the long haul for you? How do we feel about this?
I actually think he has a chance to be very productive. And I know that, like, I don't want to give you like an Odell Beckham type of, first season as a starter, but like Matthew Stafford seems to like to throw to him, targeted him quite a few times, and and he's productive with those touches. So, I know he's not going to get 32 touchdowns this year and average 2 a game. But like when you start out this hot, is it completely out of the question to ask that guy to get eight more touchdowns over the next games to get him to 10? It doesn't even look that surprising. So this guy can absolutely give you like, a 700, 800 yard, season with double-digit touchdowns. And what more can you ask of from a waiver wire pickup at this point?
Yeah, I'm a little more hesitant. I do think that he's going to kind of fall back into, that deeper role on his team. He may have his weeks where he's going to score, but I don't know. I just don't see – I feel like they pass the ball and move the ball around too much in Detroit to really count on him. With that said, I'm still picking him up if I can. There's no real risk there. If you're looking for a deep wide receiver play, for some depth on your bench at this point, like there are leagues when, I took a flyer on a player that's just sitting on my bench, why not swap him out for Kenny Golladay at this point? I'm not using a top waiver priority personally, but I'm not opposed to adding him at this point. I just don't know that I expect that he's going to really light the world on fire.
Our guy King Reed was all over him back weeks and weeks ago. So he was mentioning him. So we've heard his name quite a bit. He's looked good in the preseason. He looked great week 1. So we'll see what he does. I didn't pick him up. I do have Allen Robinson in 2 leagues. Kenny Golladay wasn't a direction I went. Maybe he is for some guys, and maybe in a 12, 14-team league, if you're blessed enough to play in a 14-team league, maybe he might be a route to go. And Detroit's going to throw the ball. Is he going to be the guy that gets it? Maybe. But they're going to throw the ball. So at least there's better or there's worse offenses to tie yourself to if you're looking for a receiver at this point.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's talk about the last name on this list. We're going to jump down for the sake of time. Talk about Cooper Kupp. Kind of a highly regarded rookie. I think everybody in the room here would agree that we really like Jared Goff to progress this season. I think most people are going to like what they saw week 1. I don't know how much of that is really just the fact the Colts were so banged up.
A lot.
76 yards and a touchdown week 1. Do we like Cooper Kupp here? Like, are we expecting that he's somebody that we want to have on our roster?
It's got to be PPR, but if it is, I'm in. I think he's going to get a ton of looks. I mean, Tavon Austin is what he is. He's a gimmick player, and he's not even that good at it. Goff just seems to really like the guy, and he should. I mean, coming out in the draft, it's like nobody has better lines in this, or nobody has better hands than this guy. He's not going to burn you. He's not going to get a whole lot of 80-yard touchdowns, but 6-7 catches a week is, ideal, and that's what he's going to give you. I mean, this stat line, with the touchdown obviously being a hit or miss, this stat line should be expected out of him. And he seems like the kind of guy that's going to have that real real high floor where you don't have to worry about a 1-for-7 kind of game out of him. So I'm in on Cooper Kupp.
I agree, and I'm just going to piggyback off what you said. It really does feel like, he and Goff have developed a pretty good chemistry. Even just watching, like, I know everybody was kind of sick of watching anything covering the Rams or whatever after Hard Knocks and everything last year and All or Nothing, but I still kind of kept an eye on them in the offseason because I was interested in seeing how some of those offensive weapons were going to come along. There's definitely a chemistry there, and keep in mind that, like, the Rams defense was so dominant that there were times that the offense didn't even get a chance to really get back on the field. So there's going to be times where they're going to have more opportunities to connect. I think that was a lower end of what you could see potential wise, especially targets out of Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, I like Cooper Kupp, and I love Goff. We talked like 2 months about it. I think he's going to have a much better season this year, and I think Cooper Kupp is a part of that. Sammy Watkins is going to play probably, like 6 more snaps or something. Tavon Austin, not that great. Robert Woods, number 4 receiver. So Kupp's going to get looks, and he's being productive. He can be that Adam Thielen type of player this year that's going to keep getting looks. He's going to catch the ball and do something with it when he has it. So I like him.
Really like looking at the ratios here. And when you see that they threw 30 passes and 6 of them were targeted at Kupp,
Right.
That's a good ratio to have for a number 2 or 3 receiver. He's gonna continue to be productive with those. So
right.
All right, let's have some fun here. Let's move from specific players to some situations that we saw this week. Week 1, Monday morning, Tuesday mornings, and the days after, everybody overreacts to everything. So we got some bad and we got some good on the list here, and we're going to talk about what we saw and whether we think that there's potential that this can continue as a trend, or we think the trend will break. It's not really a trend, but you get what I'm saying. So let's talk about Andy Dalton, the quarterback of the Bengals. He had an awful week 1 against the Ravens. 4 interceptions. The Bengals did not score a single point against the Ravens at home week 1. Are we worried about Andy Dalton, or is this just kind of like a fluky thing at this point?
It's both to me. I mean, he is what he is, and good Andy Dalton's a pretty solid player.
Right.
But I think bad Andy Dalton, and I put this on, promote my own thing here. I'm going to be releasing power rankings every Wednesday, so they should be up tomorrow. One of the lines out there is bad Andy Dalton's about as bad as it gets. Like, it doesn't get a lot worse than when he's off.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers is off, you're still getting 180 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. This dude turned the ball over 5 times because you forgot to mention his red zone fumble. I mean, like,
yep.
At home to open a season like that, yikes.
What's worse, bad Andy Dalton or good Jets quarterback?
Bad Andy Dalton, a lot worse.
Oh,
bad Andy Dalton.
No, I
look at what he just did.
I know. I'm just picking on the Jets at this point. No, I agree, Miles. Like, listen, it's an overreaction to think that, like, he's not going to be this bad every week, but he hasn't been good Andy Dalton in like 2 years. So, like, I understand that the team is a different team than they were 2 years ago, but listen, there's a reason why, the Bengals, since he's gotten there, he's not their best player, but they've kind of went exactly where he's taken them to. So if this is what we're going to get at Andy Dalton this year, then the Bengals are just going to be bad all around, and that's going to continue to look bad for Andy Dalton. So, I don't want to overreact and say that this is going to be an every week thing, but don't expect big numbers from Andy Dalton and big performances on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's hard to play quarterback when you're playing against Ray Lewis and Bart Scott and Terrell Suggs and Haloti Ngata and Ed Reed and those guys, right? It's hard to play against those guys.
Wait.
Isn't that the guys he played against?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, then
No.
Andy Dalton's just bad then, because the Ravens aren't that good, and he looked horrible. Like, he looked like those were the guys he was playing against. The whole offense looked terrible. So I do expect it to shift back some, but man, it's not like they're gonna be night and day. Like, Tom Brady looked bad, he's gonna bounce back. Andy Dalton looked bad, probably not. That's probably Andy Dalton.
Yeah, I think it'll shift back some. It's just they need to commit a little bit more to running the football, and they need to get Jeremy Hill off the field.
Jeremy
Every
Hill, man.
time he touched the ball, it was 1 yard. Literally. I mean, we sat there and I was joking in the group message about it, but like, oh, there's Jeremy Hill, 1 yard. Oh, there he goes again, another 1 yard. Like, he just doesn't contribute anything at this point to your offense. So get your more explosive guys in there, help out your quarterback in your offense that's struggling, and commit to it. Just try. You got to try something else at this point. So I expect it to level out a little bit, but I don't think he's going to be, a top quarterback by any means. All right, another quarterback who struggled this week, Russell Wilson. He passed for just 158 yards. He was sacked 3 times. Looked pretty rough behind that shaky offensive line. I think that's more the primary concern at this point. Bad offensive line. We're not able to establish any kind of running game. Are we worried about Russell Wilson's outlook based on how poor his offensive line played?
I'm not. I mean, as great as a team that they've been for 5-6 years now, they do go on the road and lay these eggs every once in a while. I mean, it's not even like Green Bay had that lights out of a game at a Rodgers or something that it was a shootout. But I mean, there's a little bit of fear because the line's not great. We've already touched on the running backs. I do really like his weapons a good bit.
Yeah.
And Russ is still going to be able to run. I mean, this is such an atypical performance for what you should. I mean, you just brought up Brady deal. He's going to come out and destroy the 49ers on Sunday at home. I mean, they just lay those eggs. And I know this isn't quite East Coast, but when they're flying 2 time zones east, they tend to lay an egg from time to time. And I'm going to chalk it up to that. I'm not concerned about Russ or the Seahawks, even though they don't have a great running game or line. I'm not concerned on either way.
And I think it can't be understated. It's not just flying 2 time zones. Like Miles, you said this to us privately. You're playing in Green Bay against Aaron Rodgers. Like, he didn't lay an egg against the Jets because he flew out to the East Coast, or the Bills, not to keep picking on the Jets or the Bengals, but like he played probably like one of the best 3 teams in the NFC. You know what I mean? Maybe 4 at max, So let's not pretend like, I mean, I to be honest, I would have expected the exact opposite score in the Seahawks' favor if that game was in Seattle. Because it's just how those 2 teams play each other.
Yeah, I'm not worried about this at all. All I'm going to say is I picked them to win the Super Bowl. I'm not backing off on that. This is a team that these early games especially, and as Miles said, some of these road games, they kind of lay an egg and then they come back the next week and you're like, oh, there's Seattle again. They just won 35-0. So
right.
Yeah, this is definitely an overreaction. I think they'll pull it together, and I think they'll be fine.
And last thing, Russell Wilson's never really played with a good line. That's not new. So I think this is actually a little better line than he's had for a while. With Ethan Posic's gonna figure it out, and Jermaine Ifedi is still learning. I think that it's gonna be a better line. Running game still is what it is, but Russell Wilson's gonna be back in action.
All right, another situation that was bad before we get into some slightly better ones. The Giants' offense as a whole, and I mean, I use this word on here strategically, they look putrid. I don't know how often I use that word, but it was the first thing that came to my mind when I watched that game. And I don't know if it's just like a little bit of Giants hating me, want to take a stab at them or whatever, but they looked absolutely putrid. 7 straight contests now, dating back to last year, where they have not scored 20 points. Is this a serious concern?
I'm going to jump in here. I was going to say, I don't want this to turn into a Giants passing situation, which it could very easily do. But they are not a good offensive football team. They can't run the ball. Eli Manning is as close to a statue as possible. And Odell Beckham, we see that he bails them out in a lot of situations. And when he's not on the field, they are as pedestrian of an offense as we get in the NFL. Because it's not even like you have a running game, It's not like you have a quarterback who can extend drive with his feet. You absolutely don't. So you're dealing with very, very, very mediocre offense. And I'm not saying it's time to move on from Eli Manning. Looking to where you're going to be in a couple of years.
It's time last year.
Yeah.
I didn't want it to turn into that, so I was trying to keep it away from that.
Yeah, I'll keep it short. I thought they looked awesome. That was one of the best Giants games I've watched in a long time. I enjoyed that immensely. I mean, literally, if it was anybody other than the Dallas Cowboys, I'd have probably enjoyed that Giants game more than I enjoyed the Eagles winning. It's hard to not score 20 points 7 straight games in today's NFL. I mean, it's not 1974. Like the Jaguars put up 29.
Yep. The Jets put up 12.
The Jets are going to put up 20 before the Giants. Write it down.
Oh. Wow. That's interesting.
That's not gonna happen.
South, do you want to share the stat that you shared with us?
Listen. On Sunday, the Yankees outscored the Giants and the Jets combined in one day. So
I'm so pumped for 2017, guys.
Yeah, listen.
Getting outscored by baseball teams.
Listen, here's kind of like my final thought on it. Eric chimed in. This is on the YouTube video. If you guys have comments you want to chime in on YouTube, you can do that, and we'll give you a shout out. But Eric chimes in. He said, unless they fix their offensive line, Eli's never going to have a chance, which is so true. I mean, Dallas has no pass rush at all. Can you imagine when they play a team that has an elite pass rusher, what's going to happen to Eli Manning? He may die.
Right.
Yeah, and the worst part for them is that they've tried to address it. Eric Flowers is just terrible. I mean, Justin Pugh's pretty good, but, I mean, you're not getting anywhere with a bad line except one of your guards is above average. Like, they've tried, and they just swing and miss. Can't draft linemen.
All right, let's talk about a couple of the things that turned out to be, a little bit nicer this weekend. Jacksonville Jaguars, Rocco's, B team, backup team here. Defense recorded 10 sacks against Houston. Is this a product of the matchup, or is this Saxonville defense as good as they looked week one?
I think they're that good. I do.
160 sacks. They're so good.
Well, maybe not. They're not their average. That is certainly a ceiling. But you Dante Fowler coming around, and they've drafted nice front seven. But where these sacks are coming from, at least half the time, and it's going to continue. Jalen Ramsey and AJ Boye. Are you kidding me? Like those are your corners.
Yep.
That's ridiculous. Like that. I mean, that's going to be. People are going to talk about Denver and stuff, and rightfully so, but that may go down this season as the best cornerback combo in the league.
Yeah, I peeped some of the – I just said I peeped. I peeped some of the video from the All-22 today on the Twitter machine. And honestly, like we could bash the Texans' offensive line, which is terrible, and we'll get into at some point. But a lot of these are just like there was nowhere to go with the ball. Jacksonville's secondary had everything locked down. So a lot of them are just coverage sacks. But another thing that I don't want to miss here is that Miles Jack looks really good. He looks like he's finally healthy. He's finally up to full speed. He's really got a grasp of what they want to do in that defense. So he was a highly regarded pick a couple seasons ago. And I think that you're going to start to see how elite of a player he is.
Yeah, that defense is just full of athletes. It's just they're a bunch of freaks, and they're all over the place, and it's scary if that's what they are, especially 160 sacks, Miles. That's really scary.
Right.
I feel who I feel really bad for right now is
The
Gus
Colts.
Bradley.
I thought you were going to say the Colts.
Because he built that entire team and never got to see it come to come to a head. Which honestly, like I'm going to downplay it a little bit because I think that Houston offensive line is absolute god awful, and Tom Savage was just standing back there looking like Eli Manning, couldn't move at all. But but 10 sacks is 10 sacks. Like, come on, like 10 sacks. Like if it was like 5 sacks, then it's like, all right, well that line is bad. 10 sacks is 10 sacks. Like that does. How often has that happened? I want somebody to look that up and find that. Do we have like a Elias Sports Bureau somewhere around that can just look that up and tell me how many times the team's got 10 sacks in one game?
Look
Yeah.
that up.
Because
they're hanging out in my kitchen.
it's not a lot.
All right. Well, let's move on from the Saxonville Jaguars and talk about Sammy Sleeves Bradford. 3-touchdown performance last night. Looked incredibly sharp as far as completion percentage. Had a lot of zip on the football as well. Pretty good MVP-ish performance in week 1.
Stop.
Listen, you can't deny that was a lights out performance. Now, we could be overreacting, but it looks like on paper and what we saw last night, the Vikings might have figured it out on how to protect Bradford this year. So are we expecting more of this?
I don't want to jump into the MVP talk already. I mean, that's just crazy.
Well, that's just me being ridiculous.
Listen,
but...
I know, but I just want to make a point to say that we're not going to start talking about that right now. I think having Dalvin Cook back there helps immensely. He really keeps teams honest, and I don't want to overlook the fact that they're playing a bad Saints defense to begin with, and that secondary has 3 brand new starters to that secondary, 2 rookies. Like, listen, he played well. I'm going to give him all the credit in the world. Extremely well. Do not expect 300+ yards and 3 touchdowns from Sam Bradford every week. We need to. This should have been in the overreaction section where we talk about whether or not we're going to claim it or not. Like, I'm not buying this from Sam Bradford for the rest of the season. I think the Vikings have a very good chance to be a good football team. That defense is incredible. Anytime you can hold Drew Brees to those types of numbers, you're doing a bang up job. We all know X is going to give it to everybody deal. All right, but
X will give it to you.
That team has a chance to be very good, but it's not going to be because Sam Bradford throws for 4,500 yards and 35 touchdowns.
I'm going to give a public service announcement real quick. 12 sacks is the most ever in a single game by a team. It's happened 5 times. 11 sacks has happened 19 times. And 10 sacks, you ready for this? Many. That's the number it gave. It just said many.
Many times.
It didn't give a number. It just said many. Many times. Happened many times. So there you go. If you want to know how many.
Basically, it's a pedestrian pass rush. That's happened.
Yeah, it basically happens. It's many times in the past 100 years. Yeah, I think back to Sam Bradford, he looked outstanding, and I agree. These aren't the exact numbers you're going to get every week from him. I'm going to just start this over. These aren't the exact numbers you're going to get from Sam Bradford every week, but Sam Bradford's a good quarterback, and this is the first time he's actually gotten to work. Not just with this team, but with a team at all for a long time, that he's gotten a full offseason to work with somebody and really get into the system. And this is what you get from Sam Bradford if he's healthy and he is in the system that he's practiced in. This is what you get. Not an MVP performance, but you're going to get good numbers. You're going to get a high completion percentage. You're going to get over 225 yards, and you're going to get 2 touchdowns or so. Like those are Sam Bradford numbers. They just are based on this game he plays and this system too. So I buy in for Sam Bradford.
Yeah, we're about to watch the best season of his career. I'm not going to throw numbers at you, but we're going to see it.
Yeah. The only thing that I'll add to that is I just want to see the line continue it. The line was so bad last year. They changed literally every position along the line. It looked like it worked out real nicely last night. I just want to see that continue, and then I'll just ditto everything you guys have said, that if you can give him the time, help him to stand in there, he could be a dangerous quarterback. So part of my knock on the predictions on them was that I didn't believe they were going to keep him upright. It looked pretty good last night. Just want to see that continue before I make any kind of judgment on him moving forward. Real quick here, 30 seconds or less from everybody. Kareem Hunt. Everybody loves what they saw out of him. I don't think anybody here is hesitant at all to get him on any fantasy football squad that you possibly can. Are we watching a potential star in the making in Kareem Hunt?
Yeah, I don't see why not. We've talked about the Andy Reid running back is a thing you want to see, and Hunt's a 3-tool player. He's a great athlete. I don't see why not. I mean, kind of like what we just said about Sam, we're not going to see those numbers every week, and he's going to have rookie weeks where he's a bonehead and makes dumb decisions. But yeah, I mean, this rookie class in general is legit, and he's every bit earning a part of it.
Listen, I'm going to jump right in. I'm going to overreact like crazy right here. Kareem Hunt is your number one pick in fantasy next year.
Wow.
Well, you should have forfeited your 30 seconds and gave it to somebody else.
Calling
But
it right now.
Kareem Hunt is going to have a good season. He's a good running back, and he looked great this week. You're not going to get those exact same numbers. He's not going to be the number one pick overall unless South is picking number one overall. Then he might be, but that's the only time. But he's going to have a good season, and I will say, hopefully, if you had DJ at a draft came back around to you, you followed our directions and went running back, and Kareem Hunt's one of those guys he got there.
So I'm gonna say that I understand where South is coming from. I don't necessarily agree with it, but we talked about it a couple weeks ago. Andy Reid running backs finish in the top 10, and if Kareem Hunt has that type of year, it's not like Andy Reid running backs in the past 10 years have not gone in the top 2 or 3 backs. So why couldn't it be Kareem Hunt?
Because David Johnson exists.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
His
hope
arm didn't
everybody
fall off. He just had surgery.
I know this isn't the conversation right now, but please God, let everybody forget about David Johnson and let me get him at 7 next year.
All right. Well, listen, we're talking about choices. We're talking about making decisions. You got a lot of stuff that you got to figure out with your roster configuration here. You know who knows a lot about choices? Our friends at Gorb. And I noticed that Miles is rocking the Gorb wear tonight. He's looking fresh. He's looking fly. And
I'm feeling good.
Feeling good too. Good. That's good. You look good. So I just had to shout it out. So, we're told by our friends in Gorb that in life, you really only have 2 choices. You can either get hungry or you can be hungry. And, being hungry is all about pursuing and chasing after the dreams that you have. We're doing it with this podcast, and people all over the world do it when they chase after their dreams. And rather than, just sitting around and always being hungry and wishing that you had more, it's all about getting hungry and chasing after that. And our friends at Gorb, they're helping us out. They're putting us in all the greatest wear. They're sponsoring the podcast, and we want to redirect you to them so that you can also chase after your dreams. If you check them out at GHORBH.com, you can find all of the best wear, from sportswear, casual wear, all kinds of stuff. They've outfitted us. They make us look good. They'll do the same thing for you. Guys, gals, kids, it doesn't matter. They got all of the best designs, all kinds of stuff for you to check out. Check them out, GHORBH.com. Get hungry or be hungry. All right, guys, it is that time of the week to talk about our goons and our ghosts. Obviously, for those that have been listening, you know that our goons are the guys that we are getting into the lineups who are going to exceed expectations based on where they're ranked. Our ghosts are guys that are ranked a little bit higher, who we think are going to fall back a little bit, who are overvalued this week, and who we're going to consider getting out of our lineup. So, Miles, I'm going to kick it off to you. Start us off this week with your goon for this week.
Yeah, my goon this week's actually South's boy, Ty Montgomery. Running back / wide receiver / overall athlete for the Packers. He's going up against Atlanta here on the fast track as they open up their new stadium. Falcons, younger defense, we've talked about it. We like them a lot. But we've also talked about how just last week they allowed 18 carries for 118 yards and a touchdown on the ground just to Cohen and Jordan Howard. And then through the air, Cohen added 8 catches for 47 yards and a touchdown. Guess what type of running back Ty Montgomery is? Nice, solid receiving back, right?
Yep.
All right, so, maybe not quite the movement skills of Tariq Cohen, which very few players have, but he is every bit the receiver that Cohen is. And listen, we banged on him, but based on what I just watched, he's pretty much every bit of the runner that Jordan Howard is. Maybe, obviously a little tier below, but he ran the ball really well. The Packers absolutely purposely got him involved. I believe 19 carries was his number last week. This is going to be a bit of a shootout game, so I don't expect 19 carries, but give him about 15 carries. I still think he can reach about 65 yards there. But through the air, I'm looking for that 8 catch for 70-yard or so kind of performance. And I think he scores twice. against Atlanta. So Ty Montgomery's my goon of the week here down in Atlanta.
All right, nice. Rocco, who do you have for us as your goon of the week?
My goon of the week is a guy that I normally wouldn't pick because he is a little highly priced, but it's Derek Carr at 8,300. It gives you, quarterback number 6, but he gets to play the New York Jets this week, who just gave up 20 fantasy points to Tyrod Taylor and no wide receivers. All right, so Tyrod got 20. Granted, some of that is on the ground, but Derek Carr with those receivers should absolutely give you a 25 spot or higher against the New York Jets this week. So I look for that 8,300 to actually get you, I'm going to say, top 2 fantasy quarterback performance this week.
All right, my goon this week is Larry Fitzgerald. Now, this is going to sound crazy, so bear with me here. It's no secret that the Colts are beat up. It's no secret that their defense is not playing very well right now. And, their best corner is out. So I'm not sure who they're going to have that can cover Larry Fitzgerald when he moves around on the field. They gave up 306 yards through the air to a pretty balanced Rams attack last week. I don't think that with David Johnson going down, the Cardinals are going to have the luxury to be balanced. I don't think that the Cardinals are going to be some kind of world beater offense, but Larry Fitzgerald is that kind of player that you just get the ball into his hands on these quick slants or these screens and whatever, and he makes things happen. He's a mismatch just about everywhere, even at this point in his career. 4 different receivers last week went for 50 plus against the Colts. Last week, Fitzgerald went 6 for 74 against a slightly better unit defensively. Again, I have no clue how the Colts are going to try and cover him. He's just a mismatch nightmare. I like him to go for 9 catches, 119 yards, and a touchdown this week. He's currently ranked as low as wide receiver 12 on average. I like him to be a top 6 wide receiver option this week. Larry Fitzgerald is my goon. Deal, tell us who you have as your goon.
So this past week, just yesterday, Adam Thielen shredded the Saints. He caught 9 passes for 157 yards. And my goon this week is the wide receiver 37. I saw him ranked as low as wide receiver 62, which is completely ridiculous. Chris Hogan is my goon of the week. Last week, Chris Hogan had a bad week. He went 1 reception for 8 yards because Tom Brady had a bad week. Tom Brady tends to not have 2 bad weeks in a row, like ever in history. Chris Hogan and Adam Thielen are almost the same person. 161, 162. One's 200 pounds, one's 210. One runs a 4.49, one runs a 4.47. One played the Saints last week and dominated them, and one's about to do it this week. Danny Amendola will almost likely be out with a concussion this week. So a lot of those 6 receptions for 100 yards he got last week are going to go in Hogan's direction. Now, I love Hogan this week, and the fact that he's ranked wide receiver 62 or even 37 is ridiculous. With 1 reception for 8 yards last week, he would have been wide receiver 68, and he's going to do so much better than that this week. There's no way that gets repeated. With all the similarities that Thielen and Hogan share, there's one important difference. One has Sammy Sleeves as quarterback. One has Tom Brady. That should be enough said there. I like Hogan to go for 6 receptions, 84 yards, and a score this week. He's my goon of the week.
Hulkster.
The Hulkster. Yeah.
The Hulkster, Chris Hogan.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about some ghosts. Rocco, you're up first. Who's your ghost of the week?
I'm going to hit you guys with something I haven't done before, but I'm going to give you 2, and it's a combo package. Please, please, please be wary of Ben and Brown this weekend. Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown. Now, I understand you paid a very high price for Antonio Brown if you drafted him, so you're going to want to start him, and I get that. And I'm not telling you not to, but please have a backup plan and don't expect a lot because, deal, say it so I don't have to. X going to give it to you. X is going to give it to you.
X is good.
X is going to give it to you. That Minnesota defense is so good, and they really have done a great job of shutting down, quarterback wide receiver combos over the last year. But even more specifically, just this past week, you basically shut down the great Drew Brees. He held him to under 300 yards, which almost never happens. 1 touchdown. He's going to throw a touchdown, but I mean, he could easily go for 2 or 3 against anybody else, and Minnesota basically shut him down, held the 15 fantasy points, and held their number 1 receiver, Michael Thomas, to 7 fantasy points. I don't like Ben and Brown this week. I think it's a terrible play. Obviously, I understand you have to, but especially for you daily fantasy players, that price is just way too high. $8,000 for Ben, $9,400 for Brown. You can't spend that kind of money and then expect them to put up numbers against that Minnesota defense.
Yeah, I'm glad that I told you X was going to give it to Mike Tom last week, and I'm glad I made you be right because you disagree with me. Now you're right.
All right, my ghost this week is Lamar Miller of the Houston Texans. He's a running back 11 on average in the rankings this week. He went 17 carries for 65 yards last week, 3.8 yards per carry behind just a really poor offensive line. Offense really could not get anything going. There's a chance that the outlook gets a little bit better with Deshaun Watson potentially starting, but Bill O'Brien came out and openly said that he sees a 60-40 split between he and Dante Foreman starting as early as this week. He understands that he needs to switch things up and try and light a fire in that department. So if that's the case, just by default, that's an insane ranking at this point. The offensive line is terrible. It's a short week against a team who was equally embarrassed in their week 1 performance. They're going on the road. The Bengals gave up yards on the ground to the Ravens, but the Ravens offensive line is a better unit than the Texans. And they were able to hit them with 2 different running backs. So a little bit more versatility there. I don't expect that that's going to happen again, especially on a short week, a team that was embarrassed. He's ranked too high for me, honestly. I think he gets about 15 carries and 58 yards. He does not score. He is my ghost of the week. Deal, who do you have as your ghost of the week?
Marcus Mariota is my ghost of the week. He is ranked QB 9 right now. I've seen him ranked as high as 5. He had a decent week last week against the Raiders defense, which really isn't great. He was a QB 15 this past week and held without a passing touchdown. He did get a rushing touchdown, but didn't do that much. He was efficient, but just a very average performance. This week he goes up, which we've already talked about, a much improved Jags defense. I heard it's called Saxville down there. Is that what's
Saxonville?
called? Oh, okay, that's it. Okay, so they look much better, and dare I say, they even looked younger.
Ooh.
Is that okay? No. All right. Well, they ate up Deshaun Watson and Tom Macho Man Savage last week. Now, Mariota is better than the 2 of them, probably combined. But last season, in the Titans' second game against the Jags, when they started to kind of figure it out and get it together, Mariota went 8 for 20 for 99 yards. I don't think it's going to be quite that bad, but there's no way he's the QB 9 this week. And I know his receiving core and team is a lot better this year than it was last year or ever. And Jen's probably still from that tough loss last year or just because they don't like Jacksonville. But I guarantee that this Jags team is hype right now after a big lopsided win, the way they came out there, how on fire they are. That's carrying over till this week. Sam Bradford's going up against the Steelers this week. It's only owned in 26% of leagues. I'd think about scooping him up and starting him ahead of Mariota this week.
All right, Miles, what do you have for us as a ghost this week?
Yeah, I'm going to enjoy this. I'm going to ghost Dez Bryant. And it's not just because I don't like him. Dez was targeted 9 times on Sunday night by Dak Prescott, not overly successfully. I mean, dude ended with 2 catches for 43 yards against the Giants. What do the Giants and the Broncos have in common? Lockdown corners. Janoris Jenkins plays Dez Bryant extremely well. We'll see if Aqib Talib or Chris Harris play him as well, but what I do know is they both play football better than Janoris Jenkins. And that's certainly not a knock on Jenkins. He's a great player, but Dez is that guy that we talked about early on. He's just got a brutal schedule, and I think those type of stat lines are what he's looking at. And honestly, Dallas's offense ran a little bit better when they kind of ignored him a little bit more. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because Zeke Elliott might be the greatest running back we've ever seen until Saquon Barkley gets here. Dude's just fun to watch, but that's beside the point. I don't like Dez Bryant this week. I think the target share is going to be pretty similar, 8 or 9 targets, but I like him converting those for 3 catches for 38 yards. That's what we're going to see out of Des Bryant this week.
All right, there you have it. Let's hit you quick with our daily fantasy football values. These are guys that we're going to try and spend a little less on to save you money, use a different area on your roster, and hopefully, you're going to get similar production to some of those top guys at the position. So I'm going to start this out this week. I'm going with Allen Hurns of the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is just more of a gut feeling than anything else this week. He was just 3 catches for 42 yards last week. They really committed to running the ball. But he's the man now in Jacksonville. Whatever that means, he is the number one basically there. So it's a run-first offense, but I think that he's set up perfectly to benefit the most off of play action in particular. He's a home run kind of guy. I think all you really need is one big reception off of one of those play action to be set up off the run to make that $5,600 price tag pay off big time. I like him 5 catches, 87 yards, 1 touchdown this week. Nothing super flashy, but for $5,600 to save you money to use somewhere else, I like that a lot. The Titans gave up 5+ catches to 3 different receivers last week. So I like Allen Hurns, $5,600. You really can't do much better than that in saving money. Deal, who's your daily value this week?
All right, Adam Thielen shredded the Saints last night. He caught 9 passes for 157 yards, but I feel like I said all that already. So Adam Thielen and Adam Thielen are almost the exact same person. Did I say that already too? Close enough? All right, so this week, Adam Thielen cost $5,800. We're trying here to give you good bargains for you so that you can get points on the cheap for guys that are bargains. So you could spend bigger points and get bigger points on guys that are, higher dollar guys. So to give you an idea, at this price, at $5,800, if you get Thielen's production from this past week, you're looking at 2.58 times value. You don't need to understand the math, but you just need to know if you get 2.5 times volume from a bunch of your players, you're going to be really rich next week. So Adam Thielen's going to put in production. Every ball that's thrown his way, he catches. He just catches. He runs good routes. He gets open. He catches the ball. He doesn't do anything fancy or flashy. It's just what he does, and he's good at his job. Last week, Thielen went up against a bad Saints defense, and he really ate last week. This week, he goes up against a Steelers defense that can also be passed on. I love the value this week. Buy in on Adam Thielen for $5,800.
All right, Miles, who's your daily value this week?
Yeah, I'm just quickly going to keep this wide receiver train going here. I find I have most success in daily when I do go ahead and make my receiver 3 somebody real cheap and just kind of hope he hits. And that way I can spend up elsewhere. So I like the trend we're going on here. I'm going with my dog, Nelson Aguilar, $5,500 at Kansas City. He was targeted 8 times by Carson Wentz on Sunday, turned that into a nice little 6-catch, 86-yard, 1-touchdown performance. It looked like Coach Peterson and company were designing plays for him. They want him involved. He looks like a completely different player. Try to ignore what the past 2 years have shown you. He is a different guy. Now, is he ever going to live up to his first-round potential? I don't know, but I don't need him to on Sunday. I just need him to repeat what he just did. If you spend $5,500 for 6 catches for 86 and a score, you're way ahead of the game already. And I like him to repeat that performance. Unfortunately, Alshon Jeffrey is going to see a whole lot of Marcus Peters, and if he doesn't, Torrey Smith is. The slot is where Kansas City can be beat. I like targets aplenty for both Aguilar and Zach Ertz coming up on Sunday out of Carson Wentz. And Aguilar's real cheap. I think he's going to help you elsewhere, so go ahead and lock him in.
All right, Rocco, round us out here. Daily value. Do you also go receiver?
I did not.
Ooh.
I kind of kept my own trend of going, goon quarterback, ghost quarterback, and daily quarterback. And I don't usually go daily quarterback because usually your money is in the high-end guys. But this week, I think your money is going to come from the bottom of the batch. For $3,000 less than your top 3 quarterbacks, you can get quarterback 28 Jared Goff, which after watching what he did last week, there's no reason why this guy should be wide receiver 28. And I only say that because he's playing against the Washington Redskins this week, who we just watched Carson Wentz go for 307 and 2. And those are pretty much the exact same stats that he gave you last week against the Colts, except for the fact that I really like his weapons in the backfield a lot more to open things up for Jared Goff. So I look for almost an exact stat line of what Carson Wentz gave you last week, and for $3,000 less than you have to spend on a top quarterback, you could just load up at running back and wide receiver and not even have to worry about those positions because of the amount you save. And this is, like I said, this is not something I normally do. I know that usually the value is in the high end quarterbacks, but for this much less, you got to take that chance. So Jared Goff at 6,500 against the Redskins, nailed.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap up here in a second, but I gotta throw this out there quick. We're really excited about this. We are going to be having a massive free giveaway. I don't know if you guys could see very well what I'm holding up here. If you're listening to the podcast, this is pretty much exclusive for the first couple of days to those who are watching right now and those who are going to listen to the podcast. We are giving away an autographed Le'Veon Bell authentic jersey. There's a certificate of authenticity that comes with this. This is legit. This is the real deal. Like, I had to convince Miles not to quit when he found out that he couldn't just have it, basically.
I can't wait to enter the contest.
I'm going to enter twice.
Listen, this is as simple as it is, okay? All you have to do is sign up for our email list. We're not going to spam you with anything. We're not going to give away your information to anybody. All that we do with our email list is every week we are going to be sending out a newsletter, highlights what we talked about on the podcast, highlights the link to get to the power rankings, any kind of articles that we put out for that week. It's as simple as that. It's not spammy. Nobody else is getting your info. Right now, I tweeted out the link at Football Goons on the Twitter just a couple minutes ago, so you can go and check out how to sign up there. And on our Facebook page, if you click on our page, facebook.com/footballgoons, on the left-hand side under the profile picture, there's an email sign-up link there. All you do is enter your first and last name and your email, and you're entered. Here's the catch. If you have 3 emails, enter all 3, you'll get 3 entries. If you have 8 emails, enter all 8, you'll get 8 entries. If you have 8 emails and your grandmother has 3, and your grandmother doesn't even know who Le'Veon Bell is, enter your grandmother's emails too. And if we pick it, take it from her. All right? It's as simple as that. This is the real deal. It's absolutely free. This is just in appreciation of the Goon Squad for all that you guys do to help us get the word out there, help us try and take this thing over, and an excitement of football season beginning. So there's no gimmicks at all with this. Just enter the email. You're going to be eligible to win. We're going to draw a name coming up in a couple weeks. The specifics of the entire thing will be coming out toward the end of the week. But for those watching and listening, you guys have the first crack at this. So this is exclusive to you right now. All right. That's going to be
enter my email if you have it.
Yeah, go for it.
Enter for me.
We got our guy King on YouTube saying he's creating new emails right now. All right. Well, listen, that's going to be it for this week's edition of the podcast. We hope that you survived week 1 and you're looking forward to week 2. Don't panic. All right. Do not panic. We want to remind you, check out footballgoons.com for all of our points of contact, podcast links, sponsors, and more. You can keep up with us on social media in a variety of places as well. Facebook.com/footballgoons, at footballgoons on the Twitter, and our YouTube channel, where you should definitely subscribe and comment. That way you're going to know whenever we're going live. We always try to communicate back whenever we're able to with our loyal listeners. We do this for you guys. We're not going to get on a high horse. That's just not us. Send us your lineup questions, your comments, your concerns, whatever else you want to talk about with us on social media, and we'll get back to you. We'll catch you all next time.